Did you know there are more than 20 Backrooms video games on Steam, and not a single one of them managed to do what an A24 movie did in less than 2 hours? Once you realize that, you can't look at the Backrooms movie the same way you look at the games anymore. Because the more you analyze the Backrooms games, the more it starts to feel like every single one of them made the exact same mistake. And Kane Pixels was the only person who managed to avoid it. This is how the movie humiliated the video games. The first time I watched Kane's videos, before A24 and long before James 1, I mistook them for real footage. The difference between the movie and the game isn't money. But to understand that difference, we first need to go back to the beginning. One single photo from 4chan. The backroom started with a yellow image, flickering fluorescent lights, and endless walls. The original description was only one sentence. If you're not careful and no clip out of reality in the wrong place at the wrong time, you can fall into the backrooms. And what makes that photo terrifying is something very specific: the absence of everything that should be there. What's surprising is that none of the 20+ Steam games understood that. So what did they do instead? Numbered levels, health bars, keys that open doors. But let's be fair, not all of them failed in the same way. If I had to make a ranking of the games that came closest to the original horror, third place would go to Escape the Backrooms, which at least understands the scale of the space. Second place would go to the Backrooms 1998, which gets much closer to the original idea. But none of them earned first place. That spot is still empty, and that changes everything when you ask yourself, why? And this is where things get even more intense, because all of these elements aren't ways to improve the Backrooms. They're exactly what destroys the horror of the original concept, because Backrooms horror isn't active. It's not, there's something out there that's gonna kill you if you don't run. Backrooms horror is passive. It's, you're in the wrong place, and there's nowhere you can go that is the right place. And that changes everything once you realize that this difference, active horror versus passive horror, is exactly why the games failed and the movie didn't. Video games have a design problem with certain types of horror, and it's not a budget problem or a developer talent problem. It's structural. Video games exist so you can complete an objective, and the Backrooms as a horror concept work in the exact opposite direction. The horror of the Backrooms is the absence of that objective. There's nothing to do, and that's it. So how do you put that into a video game without making it boring? It's almost impossible, because the moment you give the player an objective, escape the level, find the exit, avoid the monsters, the Backrooms become just another horror game with a yellow hallway aesthetic. They're not the real Backrooms anymore. What's surprising is that some games understood this halfway. The Backrooms 1998 tries to use the found footage to capture that feeling, and it does it better than most. But even there's progression, there are places to explore, there's a story arc, and the original horror of the Backrooms has no arc and no progression. There's only endless space, no level 1 and nothing to do. And this is where Kane came in with something nobody else had: the right format for the right concept. Kane Parsons chose found footage, and that wasn't an aesthetic decision. It wasn't a budget decision. It was the only decision that preserved the original horror of the Backrooms. When you watch found footage, you're not the player. The only thing you can do is watch, and that helplessness, that feeling that you can't intervene, is exactly the same horror you felt looking at the original 4chan photo. What's surprising is that Kane understood this without ever taking a single film class. He understood it because he'd spent years studying what creates fear in visual media. And he recognized that found footage was the only bridge between the original image and a narrative that could preserve its power. You can tell that every decision he made was specifically designed not to break what makes that concept work. We don't get a monster in the first minute. Instead, it appears at the edge of the frame, only after we've spent enough time in the space to feel that something is wrong. And what's interesting is that Kane didn't learn that structure in film school. He learned it from video games. And Kane wasn't the only one who understood this. The Mandela Catalog chose found footage too. Local 58 did too. All of the biggest names in analog horror made the exact same decision. Remove the player's sense of purpose. They simply give you the space and the feeling that something is deeply wrong. The difference is that Kane was the only one Hollywood called. Kane Parsons is a gamer. He grew up with Minecraft, Portal, Half-Life, and Little Big Planet. His first creations were in short films. They were worlds and spaces inside video games. He was basically designing levels before he even knew there was a name for it. And when Backrooms games started showing up on Steam, many of those developers were gamers too. They knew the same references Kane did. The same games. So, how is it possible that Kane understood something they didn't? Honestly, I think the answer comes down to what each side took away from those games. Backrooms game developers took what makes a game work as a game. Kane took something else. Portal taught him how space can feel wrong without needing a visible creature. Half-Life taught him that silence and atmosphere create more fear than a direct scare. Minecraft taught him that you can create a sense of place using simple elements repeated in unexpected ways. Kane extracted the lessons of spatial design from those games and threw away the mechanics. He focused on the feeling and discarded the gameplay. And that's when you realize the movie does something no Backrooms video game has managed to do. It puts you inside the space without giving you anything to do. And that's exactly what the Backrooms always promised. But that doesn't mean the Backrooms can't work as a video game. It means that to make them work, you'd have to find a system where having no purpose is actually fun. A game where losing your sense of purpose is the core mechanic. And to achieve that, you'd have to break the rules of both cinema and video games. Because if you think about it, what Kane really did wasn't just make a great horror movie. He found the formula for making any great horror movie. So, what would a Backrooms game that actually works look like? Honestly, I think it'll have to break one simple rule of video games. Give you no objective. Just the space and you, with no idea whether an exit even exists. And something like that already exists. It's called an interactive experience, not a video game. And that says everything about why the Backrooms are so difficult to adapt into this format. So, did the Backrooms movie humiliate the video games? Yes, but not for the same reasons most people are saying. It wasn't about budget or about talent, and it wasn't because A24 is more powerful than an indie studio. It was a matter of format. Kane chose the only format that preserves what makes the Backrooms terrifying. A format where you and the viewer have no objective. You can't do anything. All you can do is watch. And that's exactly the kind of horror the Backrooms promised from that very first 4chan photo. And the most ironic part of all is that Kane learned that lesson by playing video games. He understood what makes the spatial design of Portal and Half-Life so great. Then he used that understanding to create something those same games, for all their greatness, could never accomplish on their own. And I know everyone was expecting to see the famous creepy signs, or run into a Shrek poster and eventually make it to the iconic pool rooms level. That would have been awesome, but we have to admit that the movie absolutely kept you on the edge. And at this point, I honestly don't know whether that makes Kane the best horror director of his generation, or the best level designer who never made a video game. Anyway guys, let me know in the comments, do you think any video game will ever be able to do what this movie did with the Backrooms? And what's the furthest level you've reached in the games? We'll be reading your comments.